Are you sure you want to do this, lad? There's no other way. I guess you're right. Go, and don't look back. I will give you time, and send it back to the void if I can. Today is a good day to die. May Aul, with arms wide open, welcome you into the Hall of Mandos. I will see you there someday, brother. Now go. The great demon from the First Age was before him. He knew he wasn't making it out of the deep of Moria alive. But that's not what Gror was here for. Time. That's what he had to give them. Time to escape, to fight for another day. Another day to reclaim the greatest of mansions of the dwarves. Barak Khazad! Khazad Amanu! Gror balanced himself with the ancient crafted, rune-scored mithril shield of his ancestors. His helm fitted close to his head, allowing him clear vision to his intended target. The spear he held in his hand and arm was drawn back, and like a large ballista, he threw the elven-made spear, a gift given to the dwarves long ago in the Second Age, with all his dwarven might. True it was to the chest of the Balrog before Gror, it letting out a monstrous roar, writhing in apparent pain. The hate and shadow it exuded faded just a quiver, and Gror replied with his own boisterous dwarven roar. And grabbing for the long-hafted axe of his forefathers, the flame of Khazad, he now stood tall, shield and axe at the ready. The last ring of the dwarves glistened in the flamelight. DURIN'S Bane pulled back his wings of shadow, and with a dragon-like fury, flame bellowed out from its mouth and across its form. But Gror was not daunted. DURIN'S Bane now moved in with his flaming sword and drew it back, ready to come down fast and hard onto the lone standing dwarf. Gror saw the opportunity, and despite the heat and shadow that seemed to envelop him, and with the flame of Khazad in his right hand, the head of the axe struck fast and deep into the leg of the Balrog. The demon writhed and recoiled back in apparent pain, but what would have fell a mortal creature, it but scratched. The Balrog. DURIN'S Bane now looked at Gror with bloodthirsty intent and brought down the fiery flame-breathed sword in his hand, only for Gror to bring up the rune-scored mithril shield and brace and block the blow, the impact slamming down into Gror, but he stood tall and strong. For a dwarf, that is. Molten flame dripped down over the shield and onto Gror, but the last ring-embedded blessings protected him. No ill effects from flame was to be had in this fight. The mighty Balrog stepped back in amazement, now realizing he was not dealing with some overzealous dwarf, but something much, much more, and much more dangerous. With its hand, it reached out with its whip of many thongs. Flame and shadow followed with it. The whip reached, and its fiery tendrils wrapped around the torso of Gror, but as quickly as it enveloped him, they could not grasp him as he stooped down and out of the way. The Balrog roared in disapproval and lifted its shadowy foot and slammed it down on all of its might. But Gror tucked and rolled under it, and now found himself behind the demon. Gror lifted up the long-hafted axe, now gleaming with dwarven fury and terror, and he swung it across the back and down across the demon's shadow tail. But it was if it was just shadow, for the axe did not strike and passed through into the solid stone of the chamber floor. The Balrog now swung its large torso around and bore down on the mithril armored and shielded dwarf with all of its malice, evil, and might. Down in a high and heavy-set arc came the flaming blade, the whip and its many thongs cracked at Gror, and with the momentum of its heavy frame, it swung its tail at Gror to crush it against the adjacent rock pillar. But Gror blocked, ducked, and jumped with no blow to be had against him. The demon now roared its maw towards Gror in utter anger. Gror grinned back in response. Gror noticed now a slight shift in the air of the chamber. What had been hot, smoke-choked air and feeling of immeasurable hatred now was a little tiny bit clearer, and hope seemed to creep back in Gror. Gror attacked now more vehemently and yelling as he jumped on a large boulder near the beast and leapt up high and towards the chest of the great demon. The tactic proved its worth as the flame of Khazad drove deep and into the Balrog's chest. Flame, spark, ember, and ash spewed out, but Gror was unfazed and unharmed. Durin's Bane staggered back at the surprising attack of Gror, feeling what he hadn't felt for a long, long time, a deep, wounding pain. Durin's Bane arched its back, and as Gror now set his shield high and his feet back, it thrust the flame-wreathed sword and brought the whip towards Gror. Gror blocked the sword, but in doing so opened up his side, and the whip cracked, and Gror howled in searing pain. The Balrog, not wasting the moment, brought down its heavy foot towards Gror, but the Dwarven Champion danced back just in time and felt the ground shudder as the full weight of the demon cracked the rock. Gror glanced past the Balrog, and whether it was by chance or by some grace of Eöl, he saw his fellow Dwarven brethren make it to the exit and out to the rest of the mines. Gror was bolstered that he had done his duty, that his brothers will live to see and fight another day. Khazad! Gror shouted, and with the axe he swung high and deep into the large thigh and leg of the Balrog. And with each hit of his axe, Gror's breath drew fuller, his muscles regaining strength. Durin's Bane recoiled back in pain, the axe striking true and apparently deep, but not wounding the demonic being, however. The demon stepped back and once again swung at Gror with its sword and brought the full length of the whip at him. Gror was able to bring his shield to bear the brunt of the sword attack, but the thongs of the whip struck true against the dwarf's back, throwing him ahead and prone on the ground. Gror rolled over just in time to miss the flame and soot-wreathed foot of the demon, the ground shuddering once again at the force of the crushing blow. Gror and Durin's Bane danced across the floor of the deep chamber, Gror striking as best he could with the flame of Khazad against the demon, slowly weakening it with each blow. Durin's Bane, in its hate all but spent, swung with its sword, snapped at Gror with its whip, and slammed down with its tail and feet, but to no avail. Gror blocked and dodged each attack save for one, the last. A crushing blow to Gror's chest by its tail, and throwing him against the wall of rock that made up the cavernous chamber. "Let's finish this!" Gror yelled in response. "Baruch Khazad! Khazad Amanu!" he yelled, and as the words bellowed out and echoed through the chamber, a renewed hope flowed over him. Gror round and stepping on a rock outcropping again and leapt into the air and brought down with all of his strength the head of the long-hafted axe, it digging deep into the shoulder of the Balrog. But once again the demon of the ancient world proved resilient, and although it damaged it, the strike did not wound it. Gror slid now down the fiery back of the demon and landed on the chamber floor. He drew up his shield and braced for a response from the Balrog. Durin's Bane roared in anger and swung the heavy blade across Gror, but the dwarf stood fast and parried it with the rune-scored mithril shield. The whip cracked at Gror, but the mithril mail of the chain took the full force of the strike, and as the Balrog lifted and slammed its foot towards Gror, the dwarf stepped back just in time to miss the heavy blow. Gror yelled again a dwarven curse and swung the flame of Khazad up and down across the soot-covered leg of the demon. It took the force of the blow and it stepped back. Gror now noticed it didn't have the posture it once had, proud, defiant, invincible. It now was hunched, hurting, wounded. A thought crossed his mind. Is it possible, he wondered, could he himself live to see another day? The demon swung his sword down across Gror, but Gror brought his shield high up and blocked it. Flame and sparks exploded everywhere. The tail of Durin's Bane slammed hard down towards Gror, but it missed. But Gror now heard the crack of the fiery whip and felt the searing and constricting pain wave over his body. The Balrog pulled back on the whip, and Gror now at its mercy as his body flew towards an open and outstretched hand of the Balrog. "Ah!" Gror yelled in pain, not from the flame, but from the strangling grip of the Balrog. Durin's Bane opened its mouth and breathed hot, sulfuric-tainted flame towards Gror. But by the grace of the last ring of the dwarves, Gror kept his wits and fell no ill effects from the instant heat. Having dropped the axe just moments earlier, he grabbed for the sheathed dagger and struck down as hard as he could against the hand that held him aloft. What last of his hope he had, he thrust the dagger down deep. The Balrog wreathed back in pain and released its grasping of Gror. Gror now fell with a thud against the ground, shaken by the fall. The shield that he had held firm now clanged on the rock beside him. Time seemed to slow. Gror, dazed, shook his head and staggered to his feet. He was now open. No axe, no shield. He knew now there was no hope left. Gror smiled, for he knew now he would be seeing his forefathers at the Hall of Mandos soon enough. He stood tall, arms outstretched. Baruch Khazad, Gror whispered. Durin's Bane lifted high and straight its flaming sword, and in a long arc brought it down fast and heavy with all of its might against Gror.